What was the requirimiento, the requirement? Quote, I certify to you that with the help of God, we shall powerfully enter into your country and shall make war against you in all ways and manners that we can, and shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of their highnesses. We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them, and as such shall sell and dispose of them as their highnesses may command. And we shall take away your goods and shall do you all the mischief and damage that we can, as to vassals who do not obey and refuse to receive their lord, and resist and contradict him. And we protest that the deaths and losses which shall accrue from this are your fault, and not that of their highnesses, or ours, nor of these cavaliers who come with us. End of quote.
Resurrecting the sacred ancestral order of family community, evolving beyond the toxic parallel of the Requirimiento ordeals.
High Priest Kwatamani, Supreme Soothsayer, Soul Seer, Spiritual Healer and Revealer, Chief Elder of the Kwatamani First Genesis Tribe, the oldest, longest sustained, raw and living, plant fuel consuming family community order known, over half a century and still going strong.
We must resurrect that sacred ancestral family community order. Now, it is absolutely no possibility that it's going to be an easy task. There's so much sensitivity. There's so many mental and psychological, emotional ties to that nature that has ripped and torn apart our sacred ancestral family community order, only because it has been in place for so many generations, and those generations have not had any kind of pathway to lead them to detox, purging, and healing up until this very day.
Listen to the soul, to the soul. Oh, you gotta listen to the soul. When it rain, it pour. Time to get deep into the core to see things one has been taught to ignore.
We must take the challenge. Now, we know for a fact, those of us who have been around for a while, that there ain't been too many elders who have been given the opportunity to survive to the point of bringing forward whole life recognition of the absolute necessity for divine socioeconomic family community order. In fact, the only thing that has been left for the children of the sun to reckon with is the attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs as perpetuated by the Requirimientos and the paper bulls.
It states, we grant you by these present documents with our apostolic authority full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers and enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdoms, duchies, counties, principalities, and other property, and to reduce their persons into perpetual slavery.
And those particular attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs are geared and designed to keep the children of the sun under a state and condition of submission. We've decided that we're going to take the challenge. At this point in time, that I have generations, and in those generations I have 3 daughters who are mated to 3 sons. And I make this very clear for all who have the ear to divinely hear. Once there's a bonding relationship, a tie between man, he, and she, and offsprings are born, they have been tied and bonded into a oneness, a blood-connected oneness, regardless. So therefore, when I speak about my daughters and the fact that they are mated with my sons. What used to be translated is that we were actually breeding among each other. The brothers and sisters are mating to each other based upon soul ties, even though they have no direct bloodline ties. I want to make that clear. Those 3 daughters and those 3 sons who are mated and have produced a new generation of offsprings have to take a certain sense of responsibility by design. The objective is for them to take on their divine, natural, and innate duty, obligation, responsibility to do what? Number 1, to make sure that the masculine he give absolute guidance and protection to the feminine. That is, preserving and protecting the generation next, the women and the children, and comprehending that the feminine she is our most precious jewel. Fact, she is the first teacher. Fact, her womb is our first classroom. Fact, her womb is the statement of communal order. 2 into 1. Get that clear. Therefore, when we're talking about resurrecting divine social, economic, family, community order, we're talking about getting a lot of particular principles clear and recognizing that we are not in any way trying to define our presence based upon the toxic parallel of the recreantal ordeals or anything that interface or interrelate with that. We are talking about a much more intense way of interfacing and interrelating with each other based on natural and innate order. And when it comes to the I reasoning about my daughters and my sons, I really feel for them. I have a lot of compassion for what they'll have to go through and what they have went through. You see, I had already had experiences upon the earth with those of that recreantal mindset, the toxic parallel, and all of its attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs. They did not penetrate that to the level and degree of submission. Something within did not allow it. I give thanks to those elders, those grandparents, wherever they came from, however way it was enough that came through each and one of them to let the I not submit to that opposition nature. I feel so much sympathy for my daughters and for my sons. I have one son who's 30 years old shortly, and he's still focused somehow. It's very difficult to him to take this challenge because he's been taught the principles of divine social, economic, family, community order. He's been taught the fact that the male has a responsibility to seed new generations of consciousness through his fertilizing energy into the feminine. And yet, he's within a parallel outside of the toxic parallel. He's in a parallel that's entirely different than the wilderness. That second Genesis mindset where anything goes, where everybody can just, hey, have girlfriends, date, do it, done, do it some more, done, do it, drop seeds, do whatever. He's in an entirely different place. That natural innate order begins with how we teach and interrelate with the offsprings. Therefore, our total focus and concentration is about this family communal order. We say divine, social, economic, family communal order because we have a duty, obligation, and responsibility to be present as the masculine he, to be present for the women and the children, not to be tied to some external source that has been developed by the recreantal ordeals to serve the best interests of the Lord, as he said. The Lord talking about his warlord or the overlord or whatever is within that culture that wish to be served by those desiring to serve it. We are saying that we have no desire to serve a nature of energy that has been shown from its origin to be totally, absolutely, and diametrically opposed to our mental, physical, and spiritual health, safety, and well-being. And we're not trying to dance to trance or any other kind of vibration to convince or persuade anyone about anything except to know full well that we are about this sacred order. Our work is within this sacred order. We're talking about resurrecting divine socioeconomic family community order. If we're going to do that, we have to resurrect it. We can't go and begin to piecemeal. Everybody come in, 4 or 5 cars running around, we looking fancy and dancing, etc. Everybody have their own little private estate. And the children are in their own little separate corners, growing up to be self-asserted individuals. Those who are worshiping the idea of freedom that actually shows very clear that you are not free to establish a holistic living presence about your existence. You are free to establish your being as a servant to that nature that diametrically opposes your existence. And you're free to assimilate, integrate, and adopt it. Now, that's the business of those beings.
We shall take you and your wives and your children, and shall make slaves of them, and as such shall sell and dispose of them as their highnesses may command. And we shall take away your goods, and shall do you all the mischief and damage that we can, as to vassals who do not obey and refuse to receive their lord, and resist and contradict him. And we protest that the deaths and losses which shall accrue from this are your fault, and not that of their highnesses or ours.
I want to simply make this clear. We're not here to challenge those who are about that nature of energy. We're here to open a pathway to those who are not about that nature of energy and have a desire to see if they can evolve into divine socioeconomic family community order. This has to be clear. Otherwise, there will be a state of a lack of clarity, a lack of focus, and people will go into dreamland versions of communal order. I've seen it before. And the bottom line is, it will be ripped and torn apart because each and every agent of that toxic parallel that has come about due to the Requiem ordeals and the paper bulls and all the other indentured and chattered and colonialized states of being will absolutely not be able to surrender to the sense of divine order simply because the nature that he or she worships stands diametrically opposed to divine order. So we should not expect those beings to submit to divine order. We should not expect those beings to give glory, thanks, praise, and appreciation for our focus on resurrecting a nature of energy that will give the generation next a greater chance of holistic living survival and passing that on to the next generation. We should not expect that will occur. But we can expect that there are a few who, if they can comprehend the nature of order, divine socioeconomic family community order, they just might decide that they like the opportunity to see if they can take that step further. You see, those who are within this divine socioeconomic family community order have already took necessary steps and have already went through the trials and tribulations of knowing that, hey, something within the soulful essence of he or she must be about this, because it is absolute challenge. Change is very difficult to make. And if you're born within a parallel, a toxic parallel, then to even consider stepping outside of that ripped and torn apart vibration becomes a challenge, because you become accustomed to it, because you have fit into it, because you have learned to assimilate, integrate, and adopt the attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs of it. And that makes it very difficult to relinquish it. As one elder female said to I've been at this so long, I really respect the truth that you bring. There are things I wish I could have known when I was so much younger. But at this point in time, I don't even know if I have the energy to make that kind of change. So at this point in my life, she said, High Priest, know full well that I give the utmost respect for what you all are doing, although I once stood opposed to it. And time has told the story. Please, whatever you do, don't change your pathway. We've had too many who step up to the plate and then surrender and change their pathway and go back into the toxic parallel as you have identified it. Please, I beg you, don't. Because it's just a possibility that my soul may rise up.
Listen to the soul. To the soul. Oh, you gotta listen to the soul. When it rain, it pour. Time to get deep into the core to see things one has been taught to ignore.
And I really respected that. As a matter of fact, oftentimes when I give homage and praise, thanks and appreciation to the feminine chief, or at least having the guts to give acknowledgement to supreme truth, I am not disregarding the male, because there are a blessed few who have stepped up to the plate within this communal order and shown the I that we too can have the guts, if we're only given the opportunity of having guidance, some kind of comprehension of what it is we're supposed to do. Because as the male, you're going to automatically have a sense of stubbornness. You automatically have been groomed and conditioned within that nature that is monotheistic, that the male have to take a stance, even when that stance lead him to toxic addictions and afflictions, even when that stance lead him into emotional relationship breakdowns, mono-masculinity. We're talking about a whole state of dysfunctionality. It reminds I of this brother who asked, wait, High Priest, whose side are you on? Ours or theirs? And I asked the brother, what do you mean? Like, whose side am I on, ours or theirs? We're talking about the toxic parallel versus the divine parallel. And we're saying that there are two different natures of energy, divine order and toxic reality. If that's the case, what are you asking I to discern? He said, no, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm trying to find out which side are you on, ours or theirs. I said, who's ours? The males. Who's theirs? The female. And I say, honestly, wholeheartedly and sincerely, I take no sides in that situation. I'm about the divine union of masculine and feminine energy, and I do sincerely recognize that there has been a tremendous division, conflict, strife that has developed. And as I've said, it is developed because of the nature of this toxic parallel that has manifested out of those ordeals that were hell-bent on destroying, destabilizing our sacred ancestral communal order.
Quote, I certify to you that with the help of God, we shall powerfully enter into your country and shall make war against you in all ways and manners that we can, and shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of their highnesses. We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them, and as such shall sell and dispose of them as their highnesses may command.
And when I hear a statement like that, it is clear that a masculine soul like this soul who was speaking is really in a trap. He's really finding it difficult. And the best thing I could do is to give him any extra amount of conscious clarity possible. And that may not be enough. Simply because he already has his mind made up that it is a us or them battle that's going on. What do they call it? The battle of the sexes.
The battle of the sexes, hexes, yeah. Two parts to one whole, split in two. This is how opposition grew.
When we as he or we as she start to stand opposed to each other, we have got to comprehend that that is a statement that you are conquered, divided, separated, ruled by opposing nature of energy that seeks and search to suck, sap, and drain that last vestige of whole soul energy out of your existence. It's a battle. It's a battle that we have to face at this particular point in time, because it's not about the ego-driven, individualistic self. It is about coming together in a collective, conscious, communal order to set a pathway for the generation next. To lay out laws, rules, regulations, procedures, by any means divinely necessary that will gear and design the end resort. And what is that end resort? Resurrecting the sacred ancestral family communal order. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. And how do we do that? We're going to have to be very serious about examining our mental, conscious thoughts and reasoning. There's definitely a need for eldership guidance, and we don't have too much of that around at all. Within the communal order, what we do is face our challenges. It's difficult, but we just sit head on. And I offer every ounce of intellectual wisdom, comprehension, and whatever else to my sons and my daughters, grandsons and granddaughters, to those mates, to make sure that we interface with whole life truth. And it takes time. Within the conscious collective communal order, for example, there's no such thing as walking around having girlfriends or boyfriends or having affairs or even the whole perpetuation of divorces, separations, and those kinds of things as a way of life. What we do is focus on mental, physical, and spiritual stability, ridding the mental state of ego-driven masculinity, ego-driven femininity for the sake of the generation next. So we focus on the establishment of selected conscious relationships, selected breathing patterns, so that we will get matches instead of leaving it to heads or tails, or the whims, wants, and desires that is programmed through the media. A lot of times, man, he and she do not realize how devoted they are to that deaf culture. They don't realize how tied they are to that toxic parallel. Then I come to realize that's why we have to maintain divine socioeconomic family community order, collective conscious thoughts and reasonings in action. Otherwise, we will take any of those attitudes, values, behaviors, beliefs, and it will be transmitted into the next generation, and the offsprings will become more and more insanity. And what you will see is a whole parallel where you can't even tell if the being is wearing a sweater or what. And I'm going to leave that just like that. It lets all of us know very clearly, hey, we got work to do, and we better be quick, fast, and hurry to take care of our business, or we will produce exactly what we see. Because they will assimilate, integrate it, and adopt it by association, assimilation, and that would be very difficult to change. You see, habits are hard to break, and there ain't no ands, ifs, and buts about it. Toxic addictions and afflictions are the greatest challenge that the mass majority have. And when you start talking about change, there's so many ways in the way of change that change becomes one of the greatest challenges. So the best thing for us to do is to go through the elements necessary to detox, purge, and heal, and to come to some truth matters of facts, so that it will become easier for that next generation to not go that way. So long as we maintain those associations with those external vibrations, we have to know that each and every time our responsibility to the offsprings is to make them clear that that is outside of divine socioeconomic family community order, therefore outside of your sacred ancestral living presence. If we do not do this constantly and continuously, children learn by example and not by words. And so even if we take the position of associating with external situations, because sometimes, and it can be a necessity, we have to keep the sense of conscious focus within us. Because if we start to even bring in any of those behaviors or patterns, expressions, word sounds, if we start to pick up some of the walks, and I have actually seen that happen, because I have youth, they go out, they're basketball champions. They enjoy volleyball. They enjoy soccer. They're artistic. And they enjoy the musical expressions. We've had many awards in that category. But the basic thing is this. We have to make sure to monitor how we behave as an example, because the next generation will learn by our basic patterns. Now this is said and known, but we have to get real deep and clear about it within a communal order. Because if we don't, it's going to create problems, and problems within a communal order are extremely difficult to fix. Why? Because it starts to look like the toxic parallel give you more freedom to do what you want to do. And once one begins to have that feeling, you're starting to lose that being. Because you cannot compete with that toxic parallel on its level. And its level is material stuff and things that have already been encoded by its various programs for you to wish, want to have. It is so deep that it actually causes young females and young males to sell their soul to that opposing nature of energy with no remorse, just to have it for the moment. And it can create the most awkward and unusual kinds of relationships between man, he and she, and within and among each other, simply because of the idea of material gain, simply because it appears that you can get more lustful pleasure. So we, who are within divine socioeconomic family community order, have the greatest challenge that we can have, because we're dealing with a nature of energy that surrounds us. It's like the communal order is an island in the midst of the water. We have to be on our P's and Q's every single second. Now that's a challenge. There are those who say, wow, I like to relax and not have to be watching everything I do. I want to be able to be free to do whatever I want to do sometimes. It's very difficult for that person to comprehend that when you declare you want to be free, you are serving a nature of energy and you're not free of the truth or the consequence of it. And do not take karma as a joke. Some would say, are you trying to frighten me? I'm not scared. And it's like, we're really not talking about fright and fear. We're talking about holistic living truth. We're talking about energy. And oftentimes, that is so difficult to comprehend. Even within communal order, we run into situations that can become very difficult to comprehend. Fortunate for us, we have lesson plans. And when someone starts talking about unseen vibrations, I don't pay no attention to that. I got to see it to believe it. Immediately, there and I bring up the point, do you see the oxygen that you're breathing? And those kind of simplicity expressions has been so helpful within communal order, teaching each and every one to comprehend the nature of solar energy and those panels, and how that energy, those rays hit those panels and create a force of energy that allow us to listen to the music, work our blenders, to be able to charge batteries and do other kinds and types of things that actually would be much more of a challenge if we did not have the sense to utilize that solar energy, which is not seen, but felt. Like the wind is not seen, but felt. We have to learn to have a greater appreciation for our sacred ancestral feeling. We have to train and teach each other how to have a greater feeling for living energy. That teaches us to have a greater feeling for each other. When we look around at those populations who have been sucked, sapped, and drained of the essence of their whole life presence, when we look and see those young males so depleted, warlords, gangsters in their mind, looking for ways and means to prey, when we look and see those sisterins walking around, predators, looking for a place to prey, we got to comprehend that the nature of that parallel perpetuated by the recuentos and all of the other invasive and intrusive vibrations that actually force that into the consciousness has left people in a point, in a place, in a space that they cannot reason with divine order anymore. And if it don't exist in their consciousness, how in the world can we expect that being to reconcile the problems that they're facing? This is why divine social, economic, family, community order is an absolute necessity. And it can't just be a gathering point for people to, party and laugh and joke and go through all the other segments and byproducts that actually bring no whole life satisfaction to guarantee a greater space and place for the generation next. That's why we have to focus on the fact that our first priority is to get our own being together, to get our own mental, physical, and spiritual consciousness into a solid oneness, wholeness, and to make sure that we break the codes of that toxic parallel that divides, conquers, and separates us as man he and then man she. That's insanity. The most precious jewel that the I and I could have as a masculine he is that feminine. Because she will rebirth all that I be into the next generation if she's given all that I am of a love supreme. And we got to comprehend that. We can't step away from it, the masculine heat. We can't run, hide, duck, dodge. We have to face our divine, natural, innate duty, obligation, and responsibility. We've been given the essence of life by the most supreme seen and unseen essence of masculine and feminine energy. We have to give full acknowledgement that that most supreme seen and unseen essence said in that first Genesis, our existence, let us make man, he and she, physically upon this earth in our own image. And we have to comprehend the level of duty, obligation, responsibility that came with that by each and every one of us that manifested upon this earth within our first Genesis of existence.
Her resistance to that nature that opposes her existence is natural and innate. Which nature will she choose to guide her fate? This code is sent to penetrate and to activate the heart of femininity. And he who loves the essence of she, encoded in the I, and so it be. Birthed into the Kwatamani first Genesis family tree conditionally.